Which would tackle asked John if he'd put himself forward on the Charity Carper Facebook page, which is a charity set up for child bereavement to look after the parents of children that have been lost. I started bidding on it, and turns out Mark was bidding at the same time. As we were basically bidding against each other, it got pretty high, and I just managed to edge him to it. And then John got straight in touch with me and said, look, instead of doing a 24-hour session with just you and me, how about we make it a 48-hour session and the two of you come along? And obviously we both jumped at it, didn't we?
Yeah, it's good. It's been really good weekend, loads of fun, and Witchwood paid for our time down here for the fishing for 48 hours for all three of us, and put up a couple of prizes. Yeah, and it just speaks volumes about the company, what they're about. You know, it's not just the fishing side of things, but you know, there's all aspects to look at. You know, and helping charity is one of them, so it's great. It's really good.
The value we got to, so what we raised for charity was 950 quid, which is obviously fantastic.
Yeah. Brilliant, yeah. And it's really great, you know, John, give up your time. We've had a real laugh and managed to bang a couple of fish at the end as well, man, after that move.
It was the last night of the session last night, for 48 hours, and it was really uneventful up there, wasn't it? And I managed to see a few shows in this corner of the lake on the sort of strong wind. Said to John, you know, we're going to pack up and get round there. It was just on dark. We made the move, and John had a couple of fish last night. We've eaten well, we've drunk well, we've had a barbecue, we've had a curry, we've had sausage stew, we've had beers, rum. It's been a real good laugh, and I'm looking forward to fishing with these two again.
Likewise.
I'm going to show you just briefly how I've used it for the last sort of 12 years as a pop-up rig. It can be used in pretty much any situation. You can adjust the height of the pop-up just by tying the loop knot at the beginning at different heights, and you can use different hook patterns, hook sizes, and you can even change the hooks, the size of the hook, the pattern of the hook, without tying a new rig. You can use pretty much any of the coated braids. The one I'm using at the minute is this atomic jelly wire, 25 pounds silk brown, nice and strong, and it suits pretty much all my fishing. Taking off a length here of about 12 inches. To adjust the height of the pop-up, you need to set the height of the loop at the first part of the rig tying, and I usually use mine quite low to the deck, and all you do is loop that over, and tie an overhand granny knot straight in there like that. Now what the most important part is to make sure that, in a minute I'll show you, when I push this through the inside of the eye, it needs to be able to be long enough from the knot to the tip of that loop to be able to pass back over the top end of the hook. So it's no good having that shorter than the length of your hook, because you won't get it over in a minute. Okay?
Got it.
You can use any sort of size hook. I used to use an 8, then I used a 5, I've used 7s, I'm using 6s, but at the minute I'm using 4s. I know a lot of people would find their tackle down in the winter or for finicky feeding fish, but I don't really read too much into that. I mean, it's all different strokes for different folks, and basically in my mind, if a fish sucks this in, it's got a bigger hook and it's more likely to prick it when it's trying to get rid of it. Just push that loop a bit tight together, and I'm going to pass the tip of that loop through the inside of the eye, so that's coming out through the back. Put a rig ring over that loop. These ones are a little bit small. I think the better ones are around about 3mm. These are about 2.5mm. And all I have to do next is pass that loop over the end of the hook, like so. That loop then forms the D, and you've got your rig ring, which basically slides up and down on the D. The next thing I'm going to do is take about a 10mm section of silicone tubing, slide that silicone over the knot that I formed at the start and over the eye of the hook. So when I want to attach a shot, all I do is nip that with my teeth, strip a little bit of the plastic down. Obviously that is below the knot. I like to fish these pop-ups quite close to the deck, so it's not too high up. I'm feeding the fish with boilies that are on the bottom, and I don't want them to feel as though they're feeding too near the bottom and the pop-up to be too high. So I'm going to nip that plastic back off the off the braid, just below the tubing, around about there. Now, depending on the size of the bait and the buoyancy of it, of course, you might want to put a heavier shot on, but as a rule of thumb, I've always got some number 1 shot or BB in there, and it will be either one or the other that I use. I'm just going to put this number 1 shot on there. It's a little bit smaller. Basically, it just sits sort of like that.
Yeah.
And you can tweak it over a little bit, manipulate that plastic silicone tubing so that it sits over at an angle.
Right angle, yeah.
Rather than sitting straight up like that. That's
Yeah.
not really great
Yeah.
for hooking like that. It needs to be
right.
slightly over
Got it.
to get a better hooking. Once this is all formed, all I've got to do now is tie on the bait to the rig ring, yeah?
Yeah.
Again, there's different types of floss that you can use. This one's an ESP wax one, which is really good. And for me, this is quite a nice way of tying a bait on. I've seen people do it in different ways and it looks quite ugly, and there's quite a lot of knots between the ring and the boilie, but I like it to be really neat so the boilie's tight to the ring. And what I do is just pass that through like that, just form a loop, a simple loop like that, yeah?
Yeah.
And then form a small loop above the loop, if you get my drift.
Over the top of it, yeah.
So it's coming through the small loop, but obviously that small loop is within inside that large loop, and that forms a knot just there, and you can pull that down to a smaller size, put your boilie in there. Now this is a little bit fiddly, believe it or not, getting this boilie in here, but the more you practice it, the more you'll get used to it. And the best way I do it, if you notice, is I trap that tail
Yeah.
between that section of my finger, hold it in place with your forefinger and thumb,
Yeah.
and pull that like that. Just pull that down
Yeah.
like that. So that's tight in position. Now from there, you've got to tie a few knots to stop it slipping. And all you've got to do is just blob that section there now, and then push that down with your thumbnail. That is now nice and secure in there.
Yeah.
I'll use that as a standard sort of size, around
Yeah.
about 12 inches to start with, and as you
Yeah.
can see, once I've tied that on and I've tied the swivel on, it'll probably come down to around about 9 inches.
Yeah.
If you come up against a certain particular fish that you find feeds in a different way, whether that be the shape of the fish, the size of the fish, it may approach the bait at a different angle
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
it tilts up to feed, you know, it may well want a little bit more movement than that if it's sucking the baits up from quite a distance.
Yeah.
And then that's the only reason I would adjust it. I might make it a little bit longer, but that's about right, you know. Okay, so that's about it.
Excellent.